Welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to navigate the IR Studio Editor and go over its key tools and menu items like the hierarchy and properties panels. To start off, here's a few key elements on the UI. The first is this giant center panel called the Viewport. This is where you have a full view of the whole 3D space. Here are some basic movement controls for the Viewport. To move and rotate around the X and Y axes of the space, you can click the left mouse button and drag it around. To zoom in and out of the space, you can use the scroll wheel. To pan around the space, you can click and hold on the scroll wheel, which allows you to keep the same angle without rotating in the space. The Viewport is the visual representation of the 3D scene or world that you're going to be building in. Below that panel are a number of different tabs for your project: the Scenes tab, the Files tab, and the Assets tab. In the Scenes tab, you can see we have a couple of different scenes. And as more scenes are added to this project, they will show up here, and you can link between the scenes in a project or jump between them in the IR Studio Editor. The Files tab shows any user-uploaded files to the project. We have a couple of uploaded files already here. And then the Assets tab shows all of the first-party pre-made assets that IR's content artists have created. For example, in the Gothic Kit category, you can see a bunch of Gothic architecture that we provide for you to use, all ready to be part of your worlds. This menu sorts through different types of assets based on categories, and an upcoming video will cover how to find the right assets and use them in your projects. With these tabs and all the panels in the editor, you are able to resize them as you see fit just by dragging and dropping the edges of each panel. We recommend having at least 2 rows worth of content in the Assets tab, just so it's easier to browse. Now, moving to the top of the screen above the Viewport, we have a number of different toggle options and buttons. We'll call out some of them today, while others will be featured in other tutorial videos. Each toggle option has tooltips, so when you hover your mouse over an option, information will appear on it that can help guide you for its intended use. One particular toggle option that is useful is called Toggle Helpers, which is represented by a ruler icon. This will toggle on and off colliders and other hidden or invisible parts of the geometry that aren't immediately seen when you drag and drop an asset into the scene. This will be a big help when you're building your worlds. Another button on top of the Viewport that we want to showcase is this play button that allows you to preview the scene that is being built right in the Viewport. Let's try that now. Previewing a scene allows you to control an avatar to run around as if you were a user in the experience you are currently building. You can run around with your avatar using the arrow keys or WASD keys and controlling the camera perspective with the mouse. And then by clicking the pause button, you'll go straight back into building mode. Moving on to the right side of the window is the hierarchy panel at the top, and then the properties panel right below it. The hierarchy panel up here shows you everything that is in the scene. These are all the default elements in it right now, since this is a new scene. This includes settings, skybox, a spawn point, which is the location in the scene where players are going to first load into when entering the experience, some lighting elements, and a platform, which is the ground where your users' avatars will run on. When you add more stuff into the scene, it will show up here in the hierarchy panel as well. Let's go into how to use Gizmos. If you click on something in the hierarchy panel, it's going to highlight it in the Viewport. For example, clicking on platform will highlight the platform in the Viewport. You will notice some different colored arrow controls that light up when you hover your mouse over them. This is called the Gizmo. You can actually cycle through these with this menu on the left, which you can drag and drop around to your preference. This menu gives you the options to translate, which means to move it in the 3D space. Or you can rotate, which allows you to rotate along any of these axes, or use scale, so I can make an element longer or wider. Going down to the Properties panel, when something is selected in the hierarchy panel, such as the platform, you'll notice these specific customizable properties. Each item, or entity as we call it, in the hierarchy panel have specific properties when selected. For example, some entities have transform properties which give you the same translate, rotate, and scale controls that were demonstrated earlier. This transform properties panel allows you to control the selected entity with more precision by inputting or adjusting decimal values. Let's say you wanted to adjust the scale. Maybe you want to blow out the Y scale to be 2 instead of 1. It'll grow out to that specific measurement. We recommend not messing around with the properties in the default hierarchy until you learn more about them. Adding entities and adding components will be covered more in depth in an upcoming video, but for right now, here are the basics and where to find them. At the top of the hierarchy panel, we have the Add Entity button, which allows you to add things such as prefabs, lighting, and videos. These entities will appear in the hierarchy panel. And then at the top of the Properties panel, we have the Add Component button, where, just like adding entities in the hierarchy panel, you're adding individual components or properties to the selected entities on the hierarchy panel. For example, you could add lighting or effects, or different interactions or physics or triggers to individual entities. In case you need some guidance on certain features of the IR Studio Editor, built directly into the studio at the bottom right of the screen is the Help button. Clicking on it will open a little help widget that can help guide you to what you need by searching through the IR Creator documentation resources or allowing you to connect to an agent. Moving towards the top of the IR Studio window, there are two final things you need to know. At the top left is this hamburger menu where you can save your scene and change some settings. And the last thing to call out is this big Publish button at the top right. When you feel like your scene is ready to be presented to people, you can publish your scene, which we'll cover more closely in an upcoming video. And that's the basics of navigating the IR Studio Editor. Thanks for watching.